So we're just going to start on the top of, but really on the top of Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. We're going to go quickly through the question, 4 lines on the top. Boy Rebami. That means in the Mishnah we had said there's no oino on hektish. There's no din that you have to pay back if you overcharge. So the question is it only if it's exactly a 6? But if it's more than a 6, which din is a bittul mekach, maybe that does apply. Amr of Nachman, Hada Amr of Chasa, Pasha of Rami, I know ein lahem bittul mekach yeshlam. Einachanami. If it's more than a 6th, even by hektish, even though there's no din of eino, but if it's more than a 6th, it does have the din of bittul mekach. It does have the din that more than a 6, you have to undo it. The mekach, the hektish is bottle. The chil of hektish is bottle.
It says here, I know. It says here, Yeshim. No. How do we know that? Talking about.
I know generally means exactly the amount. Yeah. So whenever we talk about I know, we always talk about less than a 6th is machal, is mechila, and more than a 6th is bittul mekach. It's bottle. It's entirely undone. But if it's exactly a 6th, then you have to refund the amount you paid extra. So saying legabe hektish there's no din of ayna. The din of ayna doesn't apply. So he's saying now, Rav Ami is saying that means exactly a 6th. There's no din of ayna, and you can just it's a good kinyan, and you don't have you could ignore. It's almost like it's less than a 6th, and but more than a 6th, then it's really undone, fully undone. Good morning, Menachem. We're starting from the top of Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. We're just reviewing the last Gemara because it's a difficult Gemara. Okay, so Rav Ami says that although there's no hektish has no din of ayno of exactly a 6th, but more than a 6th, bittul mekach yesh lahem. It does have a din of bottle more. So now we're going to have a machlokes about what we just said b'shem Rav Ami. Machlokes Amoraim. Rabbi Yoina Omer Akdeishus, Rabbi Yirmiyah Omer Karkois. I'm sorry. And what is he talking about? This member that we said Rav Ami, Rav Yechanan says the same thing. He says, and the question is, what is it referring to? Right? We had said before, boy Rav Ami, he was talking about in general about our Mishnah, which said a list of a bunch of things. Now Rav Yechanan said it on something more specific. Are we talking about? So Rabbi Yoina says it's talking about hektish, that bittul mekach yeshem. Rabbi Yoina says it's only going on karkais. Zok to Gemara. Manda amar deishus kol shekena karkais. If you say that the din of oina is only that there's no oina on hektish, is only on hektish, but more than I'm saying it's only on Eina, but more than Eina, it's bottle. Kol shekin hakakais, you'll certainly say on hakakais. Because hektish, there's more reason to say that there's no betel mekach. Betel mekach happens. What does betel mekach mean? It means mekach tois. It means the person never would have agreed to it, and therefore he was fooled, and therefore it has to be bottle. But hektish, there's reason to say you wouldn't say betel mekach on hektish because the other side is the Rebbeinu Shalom. Rebbeinu Shalom is the one who owns hektish. And there's no fooling the Rebbeinu Shalom. So there's no such thing. There's a theory to say, there's a svara to say that we wouldn't say, even though it sounds counterintuitive, right? You'd say normally hektish, everything about, and we'll see this on Amud Beis, everything about hektish is more chama. But we're saying legabi, the idea of mekach tois, legabi bittul mekach, to impose the bittul mekach, say that it's bottle, it doesn't apply to the Rebbeinu Shalom. He doesn't have a das that could be, you say it was fooled, and therefore the kinyan never happened. So if you say, even so, that you say betel mekach, there is betel mekach on hektish, certainly you'll say it on karka. Man dama karkois, but the one who says it on karkois that is betel mekach, but aval kedashus loy. But on hektish he won't say it, like we just said, because on hektish you won't say betel mekach because it's the Rebbeinu Shalom. There's no such thing as betel mekach. Kiddush Shmuel. And this is like Shmuel, Amar Shmuel, hektish shavamana shelo shavapruta muchol. If you, like we just said, like we quoted a couple of days ago with very fascinating shita of Shmuel that he says you can be mechalel hektish on any amount. There's no. The Torah says you have to be mechalit, but there's no din of no, and not only there's no din of no, there's no din of chilul. There's no din of bitul mekach. You could pick any amount you want. You could take even $100, a cow worth $100, and be mechalit on $1. Okay, so again, let's just review one more time. So Rabbi Yaina says that both hekdashus and karka, or all the things, I guess, imagine means everything in the Mishnah. The din is going to be that there's no din of oino on these things, but there is a din of bitul mekach. Even on hektish, you're going to say there is a din of bitul mekach. He doesn't hold like we just quoted from Rabbi Yirmiyah and Shmuel that you can be mechal on any amount. And the Torah, we're not going to say bitul mekach because the Baruch Shalom knows what he's doing. He says, no, there is a din of bitul mekach. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, no, karkoyis, there's a din of bitul mekach. But hektish, we say like Shmuel, you can be mevatel, you can mechal hektish on any amount you want. And there's no problem of it. It's not going to be bitul mekach. Now the Gemara asks the kasha, Tnan Hasam. I'm going to ask a steer on Rabbi Yaina, who says that there is bitul mekach even on hektish. Imhaya kaidish balmum. So we're saying now about it. Then if someone was had something that was hektish, if you set aside an animal for kachim, you're not allowed to be mechalit. But if the hektish was a balmum, yotzal you can exchange it for another animal. But you have to make up the amount of the difference between the original animal that became mum and this new animal. It's only midrabanan that you have to make up the money. Now, he says no. Even midaraisa, it is bitul mekach, and you have to pay for the rest of it. So first the Gemara says, what is this Mishnah talking about? Ma'askin, if we're talking about where it was exactly a sixth, how could you say how could you say on a no that you have to make up the rest, that the chilul did not work? Our Mishnah said clearly the din of Eino itself of exactly a sixth, it doesn't exist on hekdashus. That's incontrovertible. That's not up for debate. Elo bitul mekach. So the case over there must be talking about not where it was exactly a sixth, but rather it was more than a sixth. Could Rabbi Yochanan say that it's only midrabanan that you have to make the rest of it? Rabbi Yaina says even on hektish there's a din of bitul mekach. Rabbi Yirmiyah says also kakois, but the problem is Rabbi Yaina. And they're both saying over the Rabbi Yaina's explaining that which Rabbi Yochanan said. So how could Rabbi Yaina, if Rabbi Yaina says that there's a din of bitul mekach even on hektish, how could he say that it's only midrabanan that you have to pay back the difference between the less expensive animal that you exchange for a more expensive animal? It should be, if Rabbi Yaina holds that we say bitul mekach even on hektish midaraisa, so it should be that you're required to make up the difference midaraisa. And this is all quoting. I mean, we're looking in the mission over there. We're saying about like Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, and Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said that he has to make up the difference only midrabam. Midaraisa, he doesn't have to pay anything. And this is the same Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Yaina was explaining. And Rabbi Yaina said that Rabbi Yochanan says, Legabi our Mishnah, that hektish does have bittul mekach, and in the Mishnah over there, he says when you exchange a cheaper animal for a more expensive animal, really everything's good. Just a chacham or misaka that you have to make up the difference. But according to him, even midaraisa, according to the way Rabbi Yoina explained Rabbi Yochanan, even midaraisa you have to make the difference because he holds you bittul mekach yesh lehem. If you do an exchange with hektish that's more than a sixth, the mekach is bottle. So Gemara, la'olam bebitul mekach. First, the Gemara says an answer to this stira between the brisa and the brisa explaining Rabbi Yochanan. Not the brisa. I'm sorry. The sheet of Rabbi Yochanan in the Mishnah, and the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan that we said b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. La'olam bebitul mekach. Be'epech to Rabbi Yochanan l'Reish Lakish. We're going to switch this Mishnah that said Lagabi a chlipin where you exchanged a cheaper animal for a balmum of kachim, that we had said that Rabbi Yochanan said that you have to make you have to pay it back midrabanan. You change it. It's not Rabbi Yochanan who said that. Was Reish Lakish who said that. Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said you have to pay the difference midaraisa, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan is taka the one who holds. According to Rabbi Yoina, he would say that Rabbi Yochanan said about that Mishnah that midaraisa you have to pay the difference because it was taka betul mekach. And what's the machlokes between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan? They're arguing about this member that we brought earlier in support of Rabbi Yirmiyah, that he said, Rabbi Yirmiyah said, the din of bittul mekach only applies to karka, but not to hektish. The reason will be because so now we're going to say this machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish will also be on this same question. If you say that the mekach, the hektish is bottle, it's because you don't hold like Shmuel. Maris lay the Shmuel, but the other mandama who says that the mekach is going to go, the chil is going to go through, he holds like Shmuel, that you could be mechalal hektish on any amount. Maris lay the Shmuel. That is the first teretz of the stira of how Rabbi Yochanan interprets the Mishnah and the din that Rabbi Yochanan said in the question of Rav Ami of whether I know of hektish yesh lahem mekach. Iba Yisema, the Kuliyam, this is really what we got up to yesterday. Iba Yisema, the Kuliyam is Luhu de Shmuel. Everyone holds like Shmuel. It means everyone holds, but etzem, you can be mechal on any amount. If that's the case, why do we say by us, according to Rabbi Yoina, bittul mekach yesh lahem by hektish? Machlokes is really whether you can do it lechatchila or not. Really, in a chanam, like Shmuel says, you can be mechal hektish on a disproportionate amount, an amount that doesn't fully cover. The question is whether you could do that lechatchila or not. Ibay sema la'olam b'chtei eina. Gemara gives another teretz. The mission that we brought as a stira on Rabbi Yoina, on Rabbi Yoina's interpretation of Rabbi Yochanan, we had first suggested, could it be talking about b'chtei eina when we say that you have to make up the damim? And we said, how could that be? In our Mishnah, we clearly said that eina itself, a sixth, you do that hektish is potter. So how could you have a machlokes over here between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan about whether lasas tzarich las lidam or the midaraisa daban v'lo tebach? And you don't have to switch around Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. But the Rav Chizda comithli, but they're arguing in the sheet of Rav Chizda. Chizda has a exactly opposite shita. Amar my ein lahem eina einam b'toras eina. He wants to say that when we say that there's no din of eina on hektish in our Mishnah, it means exactly the opposite of what we were saying until now. Until now, we were saying there's no din of eina on hektish. That if you underpay hektish, it's okay. He says the other way around. Even if it's less than a sixth, you still have to you still have to pay it back. It's ain't a b'teres eino that you don't get to keep the transaction if it's less than a sixth. Like the Gemara continues, even if it's less than a chdei, you have to be chayzer. So it's not. So there's no stira between the shita over here and the shita of the two shitas of Rabbi Yochanan.
Pretty wild shita.
Right, it's coming all the way from left field. So now we've been saying eino behektish, all the things in the Mishnah. And we're going to ask this as a question, right? What's going to ask as a question on the brisa, because we're saying the brisa is saying that there's no din of eino, that you don't have to, that you don't even get excused for less than a chdei. Until now we thought it was telling you a kula of hektish, and now we're saying it's an extra chumrah of hektish. Practically one meisvei. Ribis v'oino lehedjit. Ein ribis v'oino lehektish. When it says, we say there's a din of ribis and oino for a hedjit, but there's no din of ribis and oino for a hektish. This is saying, again, this is l'chayr shver. It's saying exactly the opposite. There's no din of ribis, and we're going to see what that means. The Gemara is going to go into this. You can pay interest to hektish, and there's no din of oino that you don't have to pay oino for hektish. But there's so a regular hedjit does have a din of ribis oino, but hektish doesn't. So it sounds like there's no din of oino by hektish. Not that it's ain't a b'teiros oino that you chayiv to pay back even if it's less than oino. So Gemara, mi alim masnisin the kimna b'teiros oino. Hachanami ribis v'din oino lehedjit ben ribis v'din oino lehektish. Say no. We just like we reinterpreted the Mishnah to say when it says there's no din of oino, it means that it's not even chay, that you're not even potter for less than oino. That brisa could also be reinterpreted in that way. Ihachi, the Gemara asked, Ihachi Tani Seifa. In the Seifa of that brisa it says Zech choy mi behedjit mi behegdish. Then when it says in the Seifa of the Mishnah, it says when it said this din, right? It said in the brisa, ribis v'oino lehedjit vein ribis lo'oino behegdish. And we said this is a choymer of hedjit mi behegdish. It's a chumrah of hedjit, that a hedjit has a din ribis and a hedjit has a din of oino. But now we're saying fakert. We're saying that the din of oino is more strict by hektish than it is by hedjit. So how can you end off and say zeh chayme behedjit behegdish? So zakumar aribis. When we say that it's a chumrah of a hedjit over a hedjit, it's only on the ribis part. But ein a chanami, so really you're putting a round peg in a square hole a little bit here, right? It's a square. Yeah, it means it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like it's going on both of them. We have to say it's going only on the rib spot. I know. So if you're saying that it's only going on ribis, when we say that it's a chumrah of a hedjit over a hegdish, why don't we say the other way around? If we're saying eina b'teiros eino, and it's a kula of hegdish, so let's say this is a chaymer, let's say this is the chaymer of hegdish on a hedjit, that you have a din of eino even for less than a sixth. The same way you're pointing out the fact that the chumrah of hedjit over hegdish, if by ribis say that l'gabi eino, that hegdish is more chamer than hedjit, that it applies even on less than a sixth, even on less than eino. So this by hedjit, generally hektish is more chamer than hedjit. So we say at the end of the brisa, this is a chumrah of hedjit over hektish, because that's not typical.
Exception.
It's an exception, so we say it. But they can't ask, but we should say this is a chumrah of hektish over hedjit, because generally hektish is more chamer. So there's no reason for the brisa to point out there's a chumrah of hektish over hedjit. That's normal. Al hektish zechamer the suloi. It's not true. There are other chumras of hektish over hedjit. So now that we brought up ribis on hektish, ribis the hektish hechidam. What's the case of we have ribis on hektish, right? When you give something, generally when you give something to hektish, it's hektish, and it stays by hektish. What's the lending going on? If we say that the gizbar, the owner of the person who's in charge of Hegdish, lent out $100, and he says, give me back $120, and there's no din of ribbis. The Gizba is not allowed to do that. He can't lend out in the first place. And if he does lend out, it's Mi'ila. And it is, Bekivin Shamala Gizba Yatsum Isav L'chulin. Bahavalu Hedjit. If the Gizber lends out money, he did something illegally. We're talking about where he didn't realize that he's not allowed to do it. But Lamaisa, it's Mi'ila. And if he's Mal, the money goes out of Hektish and it belongs to him now. He's going to have to pay it back with a Chaimish. But it's not a lending of Hektish. It's a lending of what became now the Gizber's personal money. And therefore, ribbis would apply. So how do you have lending of Hektish that we say that ribbis doesn't apply? Amrav Hoshia Hachamay and going to kibulav l'safik siltus me'arba, va'amdu mishalish. Someone said, I'm going to give you. He made a deal. The Gizbar made a deal with someone to supply flour for the menachas, and he said, I'm going to buy 4 saw of flour for a seller. I'm going to pay for 4 pounds of flour for $1. But amdu mishalish. And by the time when the time came for the contract to be fulfilled, flour was going for 3 pounds for $1. So the price of flour went up in the interim. So that has an appearance of ribbis. If you pay only $4, if you still get 4 pounds for the dollar, we'll say since you gave the money up front, since Hektish gave the dollar up front, and now he's getting 3 pounds, he's getting 4 pounds when the current price is 3 pounds. Essentially, the seller is getting the time value of money. He's allowing him to pay less than the current price for the value of the original money. I think there's only the Rabbanan, right? Because like when you pay in advance, you're paying the current price. You don't look at it's not the time value of money really that you're paying for. You didn't know if the price was going to go up or go down, so you just paid it earlier, and that was the price at that time.
Deal is a deal.
The deal is a deal, right? It's not if you buy a stock, when you buy how's it look? When you buy a call, you say the current price of Microsoft is $100 a share, and I say I'm giving you $100 for Microsoft in a month. You're not paying to lend the guy $100 for a month. Although I think like taxes, we do evaluate the time value of money, but basically what you're paying for is to get that share of stock at the current price, not to keep the money for that time. But anyway, that's unnecessarily complicated. In any case, Kedatanya, Makabal of Lasapik Siltus Me'arba, Ba'amdu Mishalish, Mesafik Me'arba. If someone made up to pay at the current lower price of 4 pounds for $1, and it's from and Hegdish was the one who was buying it, they pay the lower price. Mishalish V'amdu Me'arba. But if it goes the other way around, if you agree to supply Hegdish at the price of 3 pounds for $1 at the higher price, and then it went down, and now you get 4 pounds for $1, he's going to have to give him 4 pounds. Right, Hegdish always wins. In any case, you see that that's a case where you have theoretically ribbis, that we don't say that ribbis will apply from the fact that we allow Hegdish to pay the lower price, even the price has gone up. Rav Papa has a different text. We're talking about stones of the binyan beis hamikdash that were given over to the gizber to use for construction. Generally, whenever you give anything to hektish, it becomes kaddish right away. But an exception to that is the construction materials. Yeah, not necessarily the most chashuva people doing binyan, doing construction work. And the fear is, if you use hektish materials, they're going to use it for themselves. Like they'll sit on it, they won't treat it with the respect for hektish.
Mm-hmm.
They have to make a special provision that hektish would buy materials on credit, but not be mekadesh it till after the binyan happened. So that credit can be done where hektish receives if the materials come later, they have to pay more. You can increase the amount. They could do it with ribbis. That's what we're saying, that there's no din of ribbis. It's not also to do ribbis with hektish on these materials, that it's not considered me'ila, like we said in the original case, where hektish can take materials, and if it's delayed, that they get more money, they get more materials. Okay, now we're just going to read till the end of the Yom. This is a very quick. We're right in the middle of Nun Zayin on base. So going back to the Mishnah, we said all the things, the karka and the avodim and hektish, all of them, they all don't have tashlumi kef. Minon immediately. Where does it come from? Tanur Rabban. I'll call dvar pesha klal. I'll shav achamor prat. I'll say I'll shalma prat. I'll call aveda asher yomer chazav akol. Klal pratu klal. This is the Torah says the gabi paying kefil. It's really talking about a tiny gana, but it also will apply to general kefil. That you have a klal pratu do klal. Yata non elakena prat. It has to be like the prat. What was the prat? I'll sev al salma. I'll show al chamor. I'll say al salma, which is a prat. Ma prat first davar metalto of gufei mammon. Just like these animals, and these clothing is all something that's a metaltal, and it's gufay mammon, and it itself is mammon. I've called davar metalto of gufay mammon. Yotzer kakoi shein metaltal. That excludes karka from the din of kefil because it's not a metaltal. Yotzer avadim shekshul karkois. Avadim are hookish lekarkois. Like we says, it says achuza by avadim. Yotzu shtarash afrisha metaltal and gufay mammon. Like we said, it has to be something that it itself is worth money. A star itself is not worth money. Hekdeshus amakro re'eyu. Re'eyu v'lo hekdesh. Since the Torah says re'eyu in this pasuk, it excludes hekdesh. So that's how we exclude the four things in the mission, right? We excluded karka, avodim, shtaris, and hekdesh. Because right? So the pasuk said the prat excludes karka, and avodim ahukash lekarka, and it said again, the prat of shor, chamor, sen, salma. Salma is a baguette. Is also something shegufa imam, and that excludes shtaris. And it says the pasuk, and the pasuk says, I'll call the pesha al shor chamor al shel sham al kol veda shiyam kuzeh al likim yav der shneim ashishim likim sham yisham shnayim l'reyeyu. It says at the end l'reyeyu, so that excludes hekdesh. We also, the Mishnah said you don't pay dalad v'hei to these four things. In my time, but there's no such thing as paying 3 or 4, and since we excluded already kefil, so therefore you can't have dalad v'hei either, because two of the dalad of the chamish is kefil. If you excluded kefil, so you also can't have dalad v'hei. The general rule is anything that's excluded from kefil is excluded from dalad v'hei, because it becomes instead of dalad v'hei, it becomes 3 or 4. Shalosh v'ar. Shamachinam einenish. But we said a shamachinam doesn't swear on these 4 things. Miran immediately. Tan Rabban Chit inish oriyeu klal kesef kelim prat. Chaza v'gunam v'eish chaza v'klal protocol. Yet don't tena prat. Ma prat of kesef kelim of first davar metalta v'gufay mam. Nafkol davar metalta v'gufay mam. Yotzu karkois ain't metaltal and yotzu avodim shokshim karkois. Again, exactly the same. It's different. It's a different pasuk, and instead of saying the shor says v'salma, it says over here kesef kelim. But again, it's still metaltal and v'gufay mam. So it excludes avodim that it excludes karka that it's not metaltal, and it excludes avodim because it's hokish lekarka. Yotzu shtar shafishim metaltal and gufay mam. It excludes shtaris, which is not itself mam. So exactly on a different pasuk, but we have the same limud essentially. And we said so. Shemachinam, we said in a noisha sachar he doesn't pay. We said so. We were just talking now about a shemachinam where it was stolen from him. He doesn't have to make a shvur. Now we're saying a noisha sachar doesn't have to pay if it was stolen from him. This is talking about the din that a shomer has to pay if he doesn't provide the proper shmira for the level of shomer. So a shomer sacher has to pay for gnei aveda. V'chol behema lishmar chazav klal. Klal prat u klal liyatadon elkein prat ma prat before davar metaltel gufim mamen af kol davar metaltel gufim man yotz kakosh ena metalfen yotz avad mishok shel kakosh yotz shtosh af bisham metalten gufim mamen igdeshus amakarei rei v'losh lehegish. Again, the third time, precisely the same setup that the klal prat u klal excludes karka and evidence hukish karka. It says re'eu, that excludes hegdish, and it's something that's gufay mammon, so it excludes stars. So now we're going back a little bit. We just said before, shay mechinim ein nishba. A shay mechinim does not make a shavua. So this is a little bit complicated. I know, Dovi, you still have PTSD from Shkolim. Shkolim was a very hard masech. Going back to Shkolim, the way it works with Shkolim is every year, all Yidden in Eretz Yisrael have to send a chatzi shekel, matzah shekel, like we do on Tainus Esther as a zeicha, but they sent half a shekel in Adar, and it was brought to the Beis Hamikdash and put into a lishka, and that was their contribution that made them a shutif in the karbanos tzibah that were brought for the year. And the way it works, it was first brought into certain chests, and then there was a time in the chests were either by the towns or in the lishka, where the gizbayrim would take that money from the chest and they would put it into the place where they would go to buy they would take some of the money and buy karbanos, and from that point on, the money was already out of the hands of the owners, and at that point they already had their schus in the karbanos of the year. So Bnei Yisrael they sent their shkalim to the Beis Hamikdash. When it was stolen or lost on the way, if after the time, like we were just discussing, there was a point where they took truma, they took money from this money that had been sent, and therefore people were considered shutvan in the karbanos. If it happened after that the money was stolen, means not everyone was able to get their money in time to the Beis Hamikdash. But wherever your money was at that point, as soon as the truma happened, everyone's money, they were already shutaf, and their money was already considered to be part of hektish. So if it was after that already happened, these shaymim who were bringing it, the shluchim that had stolen from them, would make a shvua to the gizbarim to excuse themselves from having to pay for the lost money. But if it was before that point, the shban l'bnei yair, they would make a shvua to the original people who had sent it. And the bnei yair had to replace it with others, because if it was before the truma, essentially what the bride seems to be saying is that the Mishnah really, that you have to, it was stolen from the original senders, and now they have to provide new shkalim. Nimtzu oishech zirum haganavim, if the money was lost and then was found, oishech zirum haganavim was stolen and it was returned by the ganavim. Elu shaklam shkalim. Both the original ones and the new ones are all shkalim. Once something becomes hektish, even though you replaced it with new ones, it never loses its kedusha. And the halacha is, you can't, even though you pay double, it ended up you pay double, you don't get double credit, and say that I'm using my extra shekel that I paid for next year. But in any case, the big problem with all this is, we say that if it was before the truma was taken, even though it's hektish, they already were makdish it, they have to make a shvua. How could you make a shvua to the gizbarim? We said a shemer chinam, these shemrim that these shluchim that were carrying it, the shemrim, we said in our Mishnah that you don't make a shvua to part you from having to pay. So what are we talking about? You make a shvua to the gizbarim. Says no, these were paid shluchim. The shvua is not a shvua hashemrim. It's not a shvua hashemrim at all. It's really just a shvua to get paid. It means if you're a shemer and you don't do a good job, you don't watch it properly, then you don't get paid. they were making a shvua, so they should get paid for their work. It's like, how could we say they make a shvua to the Gizbayron, even if it's after the time of Truma, that it no longer is the property of the original people who sent the money? The Gizbayron were not the ones who paid the shluchim. Certainly, whether it was after the Truma was taken or before, when we say it becomes the property of the Gizbayron. But in any case, it's still the people who sent them that paid them. So the employment money, certainly the shvua has to be to their employers. It doesn't mean that they made a shvua in front of the Gizbayrim. Even though we say nishba and the Gizbayrim, it doesn't mean to the Gizbayrim. It says after. It means that after it already gone into the Rishus of Hegdish, irrevocably, that it already became truma, it already became part of Hegdish. Then they make the shvua to the Bnei Yair in front of the Gizbayrim. In order that we shouldn't have to, in order that the Gizbayrim won't be chayshah them, since it really belonged at that point to Hegdish, so we make the shvua of the employment money go in front of the Gizbayrim. Binami, another reason why we might do it in front of the Gizbayrim, in order that we shouldn't call them poishim. We don't want that. We don't want that the Gizbayrim will say you were not careful with the money. But affecting Gemara, how could you say it said it was stolen or lost? And if Shemesacha, he's chayiv. They should at least lose their payment. What does it help them? If we're saying now they're Shem Mesacha, what does it help for them to make a Shvuah? They're still going to be chayiv if they're a Shem Mesacha. We're not talking about Gneva Vaveda, or typical Gneva Vaveda. We're talking about Gneva Vaveda, which is an Einus, which a Shem Mesacha is pater on. So Nignevu is talking about where armed robbers stole it. So the type of Gneva that we say that a Shem Mesacha is pater on is a regular Gneva, but armed robbers is like an Einus. And Avdu is Shatavas Minas Mayam, that the ship got lost at sea, which again, that's not a typical Aveda that a Shem Mesacha is pater on. Rabbi Yochanan says a different text. Rabbi Yochanan Mahamani Rav Shimon Yidamar Kachem Shechai B'Yushan Yesh Lahem Oino Ishmael V'Nishbain Alein. This is Rav Shimon of our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, we had a machlekes. Rav Shimon said, even though we said Hegdish is no din of Eino and none of the things apply, and there's no din of a Shem Echina making a shvu and the Shem Mesacha having to pay, he said, but Kachem Shechai B'Yushan, if someone gave Hegdish and he said Harei Alai that I'm for it, so then he still is considered to have an achrayis in it. There isn't a din of a nav and nishban alein, so that's why they made a shvuah. So we could even be talking about the shluchim are shemer chinam, but they have to make a shvuah because they're still meshubed to the owners. This makes sense. The first part that we said they have to make a shvuah to the owners who sent them. But we said if they already took off the truma and they already gave the money toward the matzah shekel for the kabbanas tzibur, then you make a shvuah to the gizbar. At that point, it belongs to Truma, it belongs to the Gizbayrim, and it doesn't belong. There's no, even Rav Shimon is masking that you don't make a shvuah. The Tanya, you take off the Truma once it's taken, it covers all situations, whether it's lost or whether it's taken, whether it's already taken or what they're going to take. We say finally, no, this shvuah of the Gizbayrim is not a real shvuah at all. It's just a shvuah that the Chum were misaken in order that people should not think it's light, since there's no shvuah on Kachim. They won't take Kachim seriously, so we're misaken a pure takanas chachamim to make a shvuah, but it's not midine shomer or even midine. Like we said before, like we said, a shvuah because of some type of chashad. Okay, shkayach.